Hey everybody, it's Emily at Arc Schooling, and today I want to talk about some recent reads. I am trying to not have to rearrange my entire room to film a video, so this is a slightly different angle than I'm usually at, but let's just see how this goes. I used to try to do monthly wrap-ups, and I stopped doing them because I realized that I have a hard time remembering details of plots weeks after reading a book, and it just would become very frustrating. So I decided to not do monthly wrap-ups anymore, but I do still want to talk about the things that I read, because I feel like sometimes my videos tend to focus more on books I haven't read yet. So I wanted to share some things that I've read recently. The cool thing about this video is almost everything I'm going to talk about was a 5-star read, so that's awesome. I've had a lot of 5 stars this year, so it's going to be interesting when I get to the end of the year and try to narrow down to a top 10. But anyway, let's just talk about what I've read recently. So the first book I want to talk about is Amari and the Night Brothers, and this is by B.B. Alston. I've had this on my TBR for a really long time. I think I bought this right when it came out, and this came out, I want to say, at the beginning of 2021, so this is not new, but it is kind of new. And I've just been hearing so much buzz around this book, so I was very excited to finally get to pick it up. This, for anyone who's curious, is going to be in the new Level 4 update, which I am currently working on for Build Your Library. So it's going to be replacing Harry Potter, which I have the unit studies, so I wanted to take that out of the Level 4 curriculum. So this is going in its place. What I loved about this is that we get to follow Amari, who is just like my favorite new heroine that I've read this year. I just adore her. She's such a great protagonist in the story. She's very strong. She's very smart. She knows exactly what she's up against, and she's willing to deal with it. I just think a character like this could so easily wallow in self-pity, but she doesn't. And I think that's great. There's a lot of similarities, I think, to Harry Potter, which I did give this 5 stars, but if I were going to be nitpicky, I might pull back a little bit of some of my rating. I might make it more of a 4 if I was going to do that, because there are just almost too many similarities. I really wish, and this is literally the only thing I can say negatively about this book, I really wish that we would leave behind the formula that we are given in Harry Potter, because I feel like that is very predominant in middle grade fantasy that involves magic. We have the magic school setting, which isn't necessarily a Harry Potter thing, but I think it became more popular with Harry Potter. So we have that, but we also have the 3 friends, we have the bully, we have a magical teacher situation, and in this case we have the child who is an outsider entering into a magical world for the first time and learning all about this different stuff that exists. There's a magical newspaper. In this case, in Harry Potter, you get a newspaper. In this story, you have the social media aspect of that, which I don't know how to pronounce because it's a bunch of nonsense sounds, but it's like this Facebook, but for supernatural. And so it's the same kind of thing as the Daily Prophet. And you even have a mischievous elevator that almost acts like Peeves. So there's a lot of similarities, and I really wish we could get away from that. There's so many different directions you could take a story like this that don't need to remind me so heavily of Harry Potter. Just a thing that I wish would be different. Aside from that, I loved Amari. I loved the setting. I love the idea of the supernatural world, right? Underneath our world. It's in our world. We just don't have the ability to see it. But it's there. I loved the idea of magic being dangerous, because I've always felt magical powers are dangerous. They should be seen as dangerous instead of oh, this is a cool thing I can do. Because when you can do almost anything, that leads to some pretty serious power. And so I really liked seeing that. That's also like one of my favorite things that gets explored in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So like seeing it in a story like this, I just thought that was really great. Like how much the power of magic and that kind of thing can corrupt. So really, really want to know where this story is going to go. So I'm very excited to get to read the sequel later this year. I think it comes out in the fall. Definitely going to check that out. So yeah, I loved Amari. I loved her character and how she like stands up for herself, and I thought this had a great message about like overcoming not just racism, but just overcoming bullies, overcoming like the negativity that people throw at you when you're different. I just thought Amari was great, and I highly recommend picking it up. Next, I want to talk about Beautiful Little Fools by Gillian Cantor. This is the first book I've actually read by Gillian Cantor, and I think I own another one. I own Margot, which I've always meant to read, I just haven't gotten to yet. So, and oh, I also own Half-Life that she wrote. So, I have a couple of her books. This is the first one I've read, and I absolutely loved this. This is a Great Gatsby retelling, and this one focuses on the women of the story and gives them a voice and personalities, and I just thought this was so good. Like, I already liked Great Gatsby. It's one of my favorite classics, so I've read it several times. I enjoyed that story. So getting this was like, how can we make Gatsby better? This makes Gatsby better. This is perfection. If you're going to do a retelling of a popular story, like, this is how you do it. Not only does it tell the story of Gatsby from a different perspective, but it gives background to characters who we only really get a surface view of in The Great Gatsby because we're seeing them through Nick's eyes. And he's kind of just an average guy, and he doesn't really have depth enough to really see Daisy and Jordan Baker the way we need to see them. And so I loved getting that. And I also Nick views Jay Gatsby in a very different way than, say, Daisy or Jordan Baker or Catherine would. And I loved how a romantic hero, which I've never seen Jay Gatsby as a romantic hero. I think he's not really... He's more obsessive than romantic, I think, in The Great Gatsby, but we really explore that more in the story. And he comes off as not really a very nice guy, which he isn't. And he's very manipulative, and I loved getting to explore that more in this story. I thought the writing in this was just beautiful. Like, if you could ever match the writing in The Great Gatsby, this would do it. Like, the writing is so good. I'm actually kind of disappointed in myself that I read this before reading The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is the book club pick for this month, which is also a Gatsby retelling, because I have a feeling it's not gonna match this at all. Like, this was so good, and I feel like that's just gonna be fine or not good. I have regrets that I read this first, because I feel like this is too good to compete with that. So I don't know, we'll see. If you enjoy The Great Gatsby, if you've read The Great Gatsby and you feel like you want more from that, I highly recommend picking this up. This was a great book. 5 stars. My daughter and I listened to the audiobook of When the World Was Ours by Liz Kessler. This was like my favorite book last year of 2021. And so I was excited to get to read it with her. She's on a Holocaust kick right now. Unsurprising, she's my daughter. And as soon as she turned 12, it was just like, give me all of the Holocaust all of the time. So that's where we're at right now. And so I thought, why not read this with her? And I found the audiobook, and it was so good. The audiobook of this is fantastic. This is a story about World War II and the Holocaust. We're following 3 children who were best friends, and we start the story in like 1936, just before things start to get bad. And we're following Elsa and Leo and Max. Elsa and Leo are Jews, and Max is not. And we are in Vienna in Austria. And so we kind of watch these three children grow up and diverge. And we get to see how the stories play out. I don't really give too much away. The story is based, or the story of one of the characters is based on the author's grandfather and his experiences during World War II. And then she wanted to explore what if things had gone differently with one of the other characters, and she wanted to use Max to explore the idea of how does an ordinary person get caught up in Nazism and become a Nazi? Like what happens to make people who are not necessarily bad people get caught up in something like that? So there's so much great stuff in this book. It's excellent. The writing is great. The way the characters are written is just really great. They are all very much vivid. They all have distinct voices. And I just think that this is maybe a perfect upper middle grade, younger YA Holocaust story, because it gives you so many different perspectives. You get to see different ways people dealt with things, different scenarios. So I think it's a great introduction to this subject matter. And yeah, glad I was able to read it with her. She was upset about some of the things that happened in the story, unsurprising, and so she gave it 4 stars, but this is still for me a 5-star book. I read And We Rise, The Civil Rights Movement in Poems by Erica Martin. I loved this. I don't read enough poetry. I keep saying I need to read more poetry, but I just never know what to pick up. And I was looking for things for Black History Month, and I was specifically looking for things for the Civil Rights Movement because I'm kind of plotting in my head a Civil Rights era unit study that I'd like to write sometime. And so when I saw this is a brand new release. I think this came out this month, actually. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this came out this month, like at the beginning of the month. So when I saw this, I had to get my hands on it. And I'm so glad that I did. This was so good. Like, I need to read more poetry, and I need to read more things like this. The author is writing poetry about events and people of the Civil Rights Movement. So we're talking about Claudette Colvin, who I was just amazed to learn that she was the predecessor for Rosa Parks. We always hear about Rosa Parks not wanting to give up her seat, but Claudette Colvin's did that first. We get poetry about that. We get poems about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. We get poems about Rosa Parks. We get poems about freedom marches, and just there's so much depth to this. Emmett Till has a poem in here. Like it's so great. I feel like this is a fantastic way to introduce the subject matter to people who maybe don't know that much about the Civil Rights Movement. I feel like overall, the way the Civil Rights Movement is taught in school does a real disservice to the actual, like, terrible things that happen to the people fighting for these rights, because it's so whitewashed as to, like, Rosa Parks didn't want to give up her seat, Martin Luther King had a dream, and then everyone was happy and equal. Like, that's not what happened. And I think it's easy to gloss over the real, like, awfulness of what happened to these people who are fighting and working really hard to get people to see them and get equality, but also realizing that this was not that long ago. Like, your grandparents were alive when this stuff was happening, and they probably remember it. They were probably children, some of them might have been teenagers, and they experienced this stuff firsthand. Maybe they were involved in the fight, maybe they were opposed to it. Yeah, but like, this was not that long ago. And I think especially the way it's taught in schools, and almost every book and picture is in black and white because they want you to think it happened eons ago, and it didn't. I just think this is a really powerful book. I think it's important. I think it's a great way to introduce teens. There is some language in here, so I wouldn't read this with younger children, but I think like 12 and up Definitely. And the last book I want to talk about is Fly Girl by Sherry L. Smith. I listened to this on Audible, and it was a fantastic audiobook. The narrator was like spectacular. This is a story about a girl named Ida Mae, who is a very light-skinned black girl living in 1940s America, and she is taught by her father how to fly an airplane, and she decides that she wants to enlist in World War II and be a pilot. And they have a program that they're like looking for women to fly, and she decides that she could pass as white, and so she's gonna go and be a WASP and be one of the pilots. And so we're following her throughout the story. I loved this. I really want to read more of Sherry L. Smith's work. I think I've read 2 of her other books, and I've enjoyed both of them. And now I really like this. This is a 4-star read for me. I just think it was a great introduction to that because, well, I've read a lot of stuff about World War II. I haven't read a ton about the women who were in the military at the time. And so getting to see a woman, or a group of women in this case, working against all these men who don't want them there was great. And my dog really wants to come in. Hey! What's the matter? Oh, who wants to come see a puppy? Hi. Oh, okay. Ow. Hey. Hey, you want to say hi? Say hi. Yes, you want to say hi. Okay, so... Hi. Ow, no biting. Okay. You can sit with me if you can be nice. Okay, so I lost my train of thought because puppy. But also I really enjoy getting to see the perspective of a woman who was white passing and trying to figure out like how she can manage to hide her identity from these people and like what is the danger for her. And like there's some not quite romance, but some romance where she's has to debate whether this is safe. Like, would he find out? Should she tell him? So I really like that perspective too. My puppy is just totally throwing me off now. But yeah, I really enjoyed the story a lot. I think it's a great addition to any teen's study of World War II and particularly the American home front and learning about what women had to deal with at that time. So those are the books that I read recently. I had some really great stuff. I'm in the middle of another book right now that's really good, and I feel like I'm gonna have a really great reading year. Just based on what I've read thus far, I feel like my reading year is going really well. So what books have you read lately? Let me know down below in the comments. What has been the best book you read this month? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Happy reading. Bye.